Now, that is an adult Manul. That is an adult Manul cat. And that picture, my son and I called Sneaky Manul. And this one is the highest rated Make James Laugh picture I have. So usually when he's in a really bad mood, that's the go-to picture. I don't know why, because I actually think Mean Cat is funnier, and I think Hamster Cat's funnier as well. But James, it's Sneaky Manul. So what are we talking about today? Well, I'm actually presenting something that I thought was needed and timely, but it's kind of half-baked. So it's a bunch of intuitions, half-baked ideas, experiences, a kind of a review of some common use cases, and yeah, just a bunch of threads that have been weaving in my own work life and my own exploration of AI that have kind of come together in the last few months. And yeah, it's probably as much of a trial balloon. It's more of a trial balloon than a complete than a sort of a complete product. Now, what one common thing will be is that I'm making some general observations about the characteristics of AI and how those characteristics compete with what I might call the other leading brand of potentially conscious agent. Now, does anybody know what I mean by the other leading brand of potentially conscious agent? And then I have a clue. The clue is we're talking about some sort of bipedal biological life form, specifically a primate, specifically one that's likely to eat sugary, fatty food, drink alcohol, and enjoy social media. Now, a more serious point, and one I might even return to later, is that this other leading brand of potentially conscious agent actually likes stuff. And perhaps the fact that it likes stuff in some sort of, dare I say, genuine way, maybe it's one key distinguishing feature from generative AI. But that's a topic for another talk. And hopefully there'll be a few surprises in this talk as well. So this is by no means a well-polished or complete narrative. It's a work in progress. But hey, AI, the technology, is certainly a work in progress. And you know what else is a work in progress? Society's reaction to AI. So please forgive me for being half-baked, but I think the rest of the show is kind of like that as well. So let's see how it evolves. And as I said, there'll be questions, but there'll be questions I'll be asking you. All right, so just to be clear on what we're talking about, by AI, I don't mean cast decision trees. By AI, I don't mean linear regression. I do mean what we now also refer to as generative AIs or LLMs. And if you want brands in there, we're talking about things like ChatGPT, which everybody's heard of, and Bard, which fewer have heard of, but many have, and things like Llama, and now we're getting into the weeds of nerdery. Perhaps I'm talking about a new way of looking at how we work with AI. Perhaps I'm talking about a very, very, very old way of working with, well, I was going to say things, but it's actually working with people specifically, but applied in a very new place. And again, while what I'm talking about may sound absolutely brain dead obvious to you, what's interesting to me is that I keep coming across people to whom it's not obvious at all. So while the topic itself may be interestingly obvious, the fact that it's not obvious may make this a useful communication tool, even if you already know this and don't think it's that interesting. So it's a way of thinking about AI and our future with it, maybe. Okay, that's ambitious. So I'll start with one motivating example. And the motivating example is actually something that I experienced when I was in year 10. Now, those of you who know me know that I went to year 10 in the 1800s in the Victorian era. Computing was done with Babbage's difference engine. Queen Victoria was the queen, and we learnt about colonialism in school on a how to do it basis. So yeah, there's me on the left there, and you know, come to think of it, the actual classroom that I did go to first grade in, not year 10, probably looked as austere as that. only it was not in Victorian England, it was in 1970s Ukraine. But that's neither here nor there. When I was actually in year 10 here in Australia, which was quite a long time ago, like so far ago that, yes, we did have computing classes in year 10, but this was probably like one of the first classes to have this. And I hesitate to tell you what sort of computer it was because it'll really show my Victorian age. It was an Apple II. So there were no Macs. This is the pre-Mac era. And there were Apple IIs being worked on in BASIC by myself and my classmates. But our teacher told us a story. So it was trying to sort of explain computers to us from the very beginning, because some of the kids didn't get this whole idea of what a computer is and what's programming. He says, look, computers are dumb. Computers need to be instructed very precisely, step by step. That's what programming is. And he said, just to show you people not getting computers, I walked to the class the other day, and there was a kid sitting there from the computer with a textbook out in front of him, and he's typing away, looking at the textbook, typing away at the command line. And in those days, there was only command lines. There was no GUI. So he's typing away at the command line, and he's pressing enter. And every time he presses enter, it's a syntax error, and he just keeps going. And the teacher said to him, well, what are you doing? He says, I have an assignment for school. The assignment is to analyze the lead up to World War I and identify the key causes. So I'm just typing all of this information into the computer, and I'm hoping the computer will tell me. And my teacher, of course, said, well, no, that's not how it works. That's not how any of this works. And he gave that to us as an example of something you definitely don't do with computers. There was just, this is the world of computers, and this is this sci-fi world where a computer is an artificial brain into which you can just type natural language, and out of which it's not only going to make sense of the language at some sort of syntactic level, but actually draw conclusions at the level of meaning. What astounds me is where we got to on June 12, 2020, with the advent of GPT-3. Now, arguably, there were people at OpenAI that got there well before June 12, but for the rest of us outside of OpenAI, June 12 was when my computer programming teacher's view of reality was officially inverted. So there was a world where there was a very clear limit to what computers can do. There was a very clear nature to computers, and we saw this blurred with with machine learning over the years. I mean, it's only now that I think about it. That very year, well, I was a little 15, 16-year-old schoolboy in that classroom. That very year, the backprop algorithm was first published. So things were happening. It took a long time for that backprop algorithm to turn into GPT-3 and then later ChatGPT. But things were happening. But my point was that there were these two worlds. But the other thing is, and this is even more important for this talk, that boy's intuition of his computer's role was that the computer was basically a person, kind of a person-like thing. The computer was a thing that you inform and you ask nicely, and it comes back and tells you stuff, that you interact with it the way you interact with a person. The teacher tried to explain to him that he had it entirely wrong. And I bring this up because there are two fundamentally different ways here, with a tremendous gulf between them, of relating to technology in general and AI in particular. More on this later. So jumping around, did I mention that this isn't a very well-structured and linear narrative? Jumping around, I just want to do some warm-up and again some questions to you. So who here, if you're feeling brave enough to let us know how you feel, thinks that AI is overhyped? Okay. Who thinks that it's underhyped? Who thinks that it's hyped just right? Who thinks that it's mishyped? Can something be overhyped and underhyped at the same time? Because I can tell you something I came across analogously in my stats and machine learning forays is something can be overfit and underfit at the same time, by the way. But yes, here's the other thing. Here's a more important question. Who is certain about their opinion? Raise their hands. Who's absolutely sure or reasonably sure? Because I think the certainty aspect is even more interesting than what your actual opinion is. So, a more probing question is, do you have a view on AI reaching near human or superhuman capability? Do you think it's possible? Do you think it's going to happen soon? Do you think it's completely impossible? Is it impossible for technological reasons or some metaphysical reasons? Has it happened already? So yeah, this one's a rhetorical question. I need to put the hands up, but what I find is that just about everybody has a view, and the closer they are to the field, the more defined their view is, which kind of confuses me because I kind of don't know what to think. And just to motivate the thinking in this direction, I decided to do some Venn diagramming. And I also found not only am I terrible at PowerPoint, I am so terrible. I couldn't even get the freaking circles to be transparent. It wasn't PowerPoint, it was Google Slides. And after, yeah, look, it was either throwing the computer down several stairs, or I'm just, I thought, bugger this, I'm just going to draw it freehand. So yeah, your Venn diagram is Eugene drawing freehand because he's hopeless with Google Slides. So here's like a Venn blob, and let's call this Venn blob what humans can do. And here's another Venn blob, which we can call what technology can do, which naturally includes, you could maybe put it in as a strict subset, you know, blob in a blob, Venn diagram style, which is what I like. So, am I being controversial by saying that these two blobs overlap? There are some things that both humans and technology can do. Have I lost anyone yet? I hope not. So there is some overlap. Can we agree with that? Okay. Now, let's also frame it. Let's say that there was a state of affairs of this Venn diagram before June 12, 2020, and if you're going to be absolutely pedantic, let's just say, well, before whenever it was that OpenAI actually did build GPT-3. So there was a state of affairs before that event, and can we agree? And I'm about 99% certain on this, but I'm not. No 100% in this world, except maths, but maybe not even then. That things changed. That specifically the amount, the chunk of what only humans can do got smaller. That the overlap between technology and humans got bigger. The technology kind of encroached on human capability. Can we all agree on that? If you think this is rubbish, I'd love to hear from you as well. Very interested in contrary views. And of course, we can ask, well, by how much? Because, okay, these are highly conceptual graphs, but you get the idea of this ain't much, this is a bit more, this is quite a bit more, this is almost all of it. And indeed, it may be that there's not much left. And yeah, I actually do wonder if there's anybody who believes that in some sort of meaningful sense, nothing really changed on June 12, 2020. I find that I do talk to people, including close friends, including at least one person who was in that list of people I thanked, whose point of view is more or less this. Now, I don't fully understand that point of view, but I'm trying to. Now, the other thing that we're all wondering is this where we're headed? And worse, perhaps we're already here, we're almost here. And this is the situation that anything that humans can do, technology can do as well. So when people are worrying about the singularity, when people are worrying about AI taking everyone's jobs, when people are worrying about the Terminator scenario, they're worrying about this. They're worrying about this. I'm pointing at the screen. You can't see what's on my screen. Who told me to point to the screen? It's your fault. Yeah. So that, by the way, is what doomerism looks like. Okay. Now, I'm not saying this is coming, but I'm saying the people who think this is coming think that this is coming. That's a picture of doom. If anybody says that's not a picture of doom, I'd like to hear from you as well. In fact, no, there are people who say, yes, this is coming, but it's not doom because the AIs are all going to be very, very nice to us. There are seriously, people believe that, and I'm not laughing at it. I don't know. So the important thing is that there are lots of opinions. There are people with all of these points of view, including the nothing's really changed. There's people with the nothing's really changed point of view. There are people with the we're already here point of view, and everything in between. And when I say people, I don't just mean random people with tinfoil hats in basements. I mean experts, leading experts. So opinions differ on where we are in terms of AI capability. Opinions differ on when it will reach parity with humans. What's interesting is that there are opinions that 3 years ago would have sounded batshit insane to most people, that are now, well, mainstream educated opinions. There were sci-fi things that were sci-fi grade, certainly in the sort of the open marketplace of ideas, but even a bit suspect, behind the closed doors of AI expertise. Those opinions, well, 3 years things changed. The sci-fi stuff suddenly went mainstream. I don't know what that sort of cat is called, but it's some sort of wild cat. Yeah, this one usually works on James as well, but nothing works as well as Sneaky Manor. Now, do we know whether or when AI is going to supersede people or can do it? Well, some believe it to be impossible. Others believe it to have already arrived. Some believe it to be in between. A philosopher that I like once said, describing a certain idea, is, look, that idea may be debatable, but what's not debatable is that it's debatable. So what's not debatable is that a whole lot of previously inconceivable stuff is suddenly debatable in a way that it wasn't in 2020. And yes, prominent experts are in massive disagreement. Do you want names? Well, you got, I think, Jan LeCun at one extreme. You got Eliezer Yudkowsky at the other extreme. And if you don't like Eliezer Yudkowsky, you don't think he's a real AI expert, who's just a sort of a whatever it is that he is. There are actual AI practitioners who seem to more or less share his view. So yeah, the point is there are people in all of these camps. And it reminds me a little bit of economics, which is to say, well, if the really, really, really smart people are really divided, the best thing I can say is, I don't know. That is a picture of a macadamia that grew from one of the macadamia seeds in my backyard, and it's doing rather well, and I water it occasionally. Important to pay attention to these things when we're talking about AI doom. Yeah? That is a white-faced heron sitting on my parents' roof. You don't see him there very often. I'm rather fond of the birds. So it's important to notice that what we've had is a qualitative change, not just a quantitative change. So it's not just that AI has got better at doing stuff. It's that AI is doing more kinds of things. There's a kind of qualitative encroachment on what used to be the human realm. So the open questions, which I'm probably going to leave right here, but I promised to talk about them in my talk outline. I did say in my talk outline that things might change a bit in the talk. Well, here we are. But in the talk outline, I did talk about whether humans have a moat. Well, let's cover that. So what's left for humans to do if we're in this world? In fact, is there much for humans to do when we're in this world? Like what is in that sliver if we're in this world? Or how do you ensure that you're in that remaining chunk if you're in this world? So do humans have a moat? Is there something fundamentally human that AI will never take from us? And you can answer that question now. You can also answer that question when completely new forms of AI, I'm not even talking LLMs, suddenly appear and can do new things. Like, what is the guarantee they can't? Well, I do know people who think there are metaphysical guarantees that they can't. I'm not sure I fully understand those arguments, but well, there you go. Do humans have a moat? Do humans have a guarantee that their human capability and their human domain will be unassailed? Let's see. Well, open question. So some questions for you on this section. Basically, what is your opinion on AI overtaking humans in all tasks? Now, what I find is that just about everybody, as I said, has an opinion. What I'm also interested in is the basis for your opinion, because everybody has an opinion. Of those, a subset have an argument or a basis for that opinion. And the third thing I'm interested in is how certain you are of that opinion. Because what I find is that, yeah, most people have opinions. Of those, some have arguments. And of those, a subset is willing to actually give it a probability and actually not make that probability very high and just say, look, the reason I'm presenting that as my main argument, I think my main expectation is because I think the other things are even less likely, which is not the same as saying, this is the truth for sure. The other thing I usually want to know is how well do you understand the other opinions and their arguments? So sometimes you talk to people who have an opinion, but they can actually articulate to you a different opinion or an opposite opinion better than those people holding it. Well, then it's interesting. And the last thing I would ask, if you are someone who has an argument and basically frames their opinion probabilistically and actually understands the counter arguments, the other thing I'd be interested in is what it would take for you to change your mind. So I'm interested in this opinion package when it comes complete with, well, where is the departure point? If I were to try to convince you otherwise, what would it take? Anyway, that's some mental exercise for you and possibly some leading questions for anyone who actually wants to engage in any dialogue. Like I said, I welcome dialogue. And by the way, if you don't want to do any of this stuff and you still want to get in touch and have a chat and coffee, that's fine too. I think this stuff is useful for both parties. Probably worth asking, can AI just be stopped? Can this not happen? Well, there are several ways for it not to happen. What are the different ways? By the way, that's Mean Duck. Mean Duck is not as funny as the cats, but Mean Duck has a role, and we love Mean Duck. And since we're talking about AI doomerism, I thought Mean Duck is very appropriate. It's one of those slides where there is actually some semantic relationship to the content. So can it be stopped? Well, it can be stopped if it turns out that it really is overhyped and not going to get any better. So if all those AI skeptics out there that say, well, it's just you know, yet another glorified nonlinear regression, and it's just pattern matching, and there's no big deal, and it's just rote learning. You know, there are a bunch of sort of anti-hype arguments out there. If they're right, well, then there's not a lot to worry about, is there? Are they right? Maybe it is great. Maybe it is great, and it is going to change the world in various ways, and it is going to keep getting better, but it may, at its limit, still fall far short of what humans can do. Maybe those people who think that there are things about people that are fundamentally unassailable, unreachable for AI, well, in that case, we're fine. Now, it may be that we are looking at something that can go full singularity on us if we let it, but we may be clever enough to not let it. Maybe we can constrain it in some way and just stop it here. You know, some of you may be aware of the letter that went around some months ago, where signatures were placed on it by any number of prominent people that called for a moratorium on LLM research. I'm not sure how that went actually, but the idea was to, well, constrain LLMs to not let them get out of hand. And of course, the whole thing can be stopped altogether. Now, there's two ways to stop AI altogether. The two ways are we stop AI but keep society going, or, I don't know, nuclear Armageddon and the whole thing goes. Maybe somewhere in between. But the point is, it's not inconceivable that AI is theoretically singularity grade, but we just stop it and maybe get rid of it. There's a sci-fi book. Who's read Dune? Who has read Dune or not, but has heard of the Butlerian Jihad? The Butlerian Jihad was a sci-fi event where a civilization turned on their AIs, destroyed them, and basically created a spacefaring civilization where computers were illegal. Interesting sci-fi world, and that's the world of Dune, where the latest cinematographic interpretation of the book is currently, well, the first part was screening last year, and the second part is about to screen. So yeah, highly recommend it.